Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing how to make a cube using a rectangular pattern. So this is the fifth and last video in the Make a Cube series. If you haven't seen the other ones, go back and watch those. And as I mentioned before, this is just a way to make a cube, probably not the best way to make one, but it's just getting you familiar with the different possibilities of Fusion. So let's go ahead and make sure we're in the cube folder here. Click File, New Design, and then we're going to click Command S to save the file, and we're going to call it Cube Rectangular Pattern. And if you aren't familiar with Fusioneers, we have the files available for free. This is the file with no dimensions, and then the file with the dimensions. It's available at our Skool community with the link down in the description if you're watching on YouTube. So this is to scale, so if you want to practice measuring it, you can do that, and probably practice on this and then make sure everything's right on that. And this is the imperial length, which is 1 inch, and then this is the metric length, which is 25.4 millimeters. So we're making a 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch cube today. So if we go back to our file that we just made, we turn on our origin, and now let's start making a sketch. So we're going to make a center rectangle, and then we're going to pattern the cube out, and this will make more sense as we do it. So let's go ahead and get started. So click on Create Rectangle, and then we want the center rectangle because, as I mentioned before, I like stuff to be centered around the origin when possible. So let's go ahead and draw that out, and now we're going to dimension this. So the length is going to be the full length of the cube, so 25.4. And then the width here, let's do 9. I like odd numbers just because this will be the center point, and then we'll have equal numbers on each side. So let's dimension again, and let's make this 25.4 divided by 9. All right, then we'll click Finish Sketch. And now we just need to extrude this out. So click E for extrude. And if we really want to be centered, what we want to do is actually extrude this symmetrically in both directions. Obviously it's fine to just go in one direction, but just to show y'all that that's a possibility, let's go ahead and click Direction Symmetric. And then it's important to note this measurement icon here. So you see here it says measurement. So if we want what we put in for our dimension be just half of the symmetric distance, then we have this one selected. If we want our distance to be the full length, then we select this one. So it depends on what you're doing, but for this case, let's just use full length. And if this is the full length, we want it to be 25.4. So for instance, if we change this back to half length, then this distance is 25.4, and then the full length is double that, so 50.8. So just make sure you have the whole length selected, which we do, and this is 25.4, which is 1 inch, which is the height of our cube. And then we have it symmetric, so it's split in half here, and then we click OK. All right, and so now we're going to do our pattern. So let's do rectangular pattern. If you don't have it up here, it's Create Pattern, Rectangular Pattern. And then our type is rectangle, which is the default. Our object type is bodies, which is already selected. So let's select our object, which is this body. And then our axis is which way we want to make the pattern in. So since we want to go, if we look at it from the front, we want to go in this direction. So let's select this red axis. And then you'll see if we drag that it's in the right axis. But one thing to note here is there's also another axis that we've selected. So if we go back to the home view, you'll see that there's two arrows. So if you pull this arrow out, you see that now we have a lot more bodies than we need, and they're not all in the right direction. So this is why it's called a rectangular pattern, because obviously you can make a pattern that's in a rectangle fashion, but you can also use it for a linear pattern. So all you have to do is just select the one that you don't want to use, and then just change the copies to 1. And so now we have this one, and we can make, the correct number in this direction. So now we basically just made the rectangular pattern into a linear pattern. And some of this is repeated over here. So for instance, this was the axis we just changed to 1. And once it's 1, you don't really have to worry about it anymore, so you can reduce it there. And now we're really mainly concerned with axis 1. Now, if we want to make this into a symmetric cube, we're going to have to change a few things. So the first thing, let's just go in order down the rectangular pattern kind of window here. So we have body selected, we selected our object, we have the right axis selected. Our distribution, this is something that kind of depends on your preferences, again, kind of like the symmetric length. But so if we're doing spacing, which is the distance between each, we want it to be 25.4 divided by 9, right? If we have 9 different pieces. So if we do 25.4 divided by 9, you'll see it comes in here. And so that's what we want, right? So we have the bodies right next to each other. We just don't have enough bodies yet. So our quantity needs to be set to 9. And so now we have our cube, right? But it's not centered around the origin, because our origin, if we look at it from the front, is over here. So now we just need it to be symmetric. So the way we change that is we do direction and we make it symmetric. And now we have 4 bodies on this side, 4 bodies on that side. We have our original body here in the middle. Everything's nice and symmetric, which is what we want. So if we click OK, we'll have our cube centered on the origin. And just to briefly show you what I mean by this spacing option, if you change it to extent, you'll see that this automatically updated. So if we go back to spacing, this is our calculation we made when we said 25.4 divided by 9. But if we go to extent, let's do the same thing. We said 25.4 divided by 9. And you'll see that it's not quite right. So it just depends, again, on how you like to think about things. I personally think it's more intuitive to use the spacing than the extent. So that's what I use most of the time. So 25.4 divided by 9. And that's what we want. So click OK. All right, so now that we have our cube, the last step is to combine the bodies. So if you've been following along, you probably remember that since we did this pattern, we don't have 1 cube, we actually have 9 slices of a cube. So if we want to make that into 1 cube, we click combine, we select our target body first, which you can select any of the sections that you want. And then for the tool bodies, let's just select all the other ones. And you can look over here, make sure all of them are selected. And then we leave all the other settings on the default, which is join. And we don't want a new component. We don't want to keep tools for now. So click OK. And now you see you have 1 body. And that's really all that we wanted to do for this one. So thank you for taking time to watch and hope you enjoyed it. See you in the next one.